Good morning to everyone. Great to have you here today. On behalf of the Director General, Ministry of the Public Service, and the Director Learning and Development Directorate, welcome to our webinar on intentional leadership, empowering future leaders who dare to succeed. I am your moderator, Alison Beth Sullivan, Senior Human Resource Officer here at the Learning and Development Directorate. Let's go through some rules of engagement. You're reminded to turn off your camera and microphone during the presentation. During the session, please use the question and answer tool at the bottom of the Zoom screen to send your questions to the presenter. At the end of the presentation, we have set aside 10 minutes for your question and answers. As we wrap up the session, you will be invited to complete our participant feedback form using the link that will be placed in the chat towards the end of the presentation. Our presenter today is no other than Ms. Joanne Jordan, Acting Director, People's Resourcing and Compliance Directorate. Ms. Jordan is an educator and human resource professional with over 20 years experience. Being passionate about helping people maximize their potential, both personally and professionally, has led her to transition from being an educator to an HR professional. Ms. Jordan has served in the public service of Barbados since 2000, where she has held the posts of teacher, training officer, instructional designer, senior training officer, senior human resource officer, and deputy director, and now acting director, Ministry of the Public Service. As the acting director of the People's Resource and Compliance Directorate of the Ministry of the Public Service, Ms. Jordan oversees the operations of a portfolio that has overall responsibility for the services commissions, in addition to the disciplinary, recruitment, pensions, leave administration, and the people support and wellness functions. Ms. Jordan is a graduate of the University of Leicester, United Kingdom, where she earned a Master of Science in Human Resource Development and Performance Management in 2010. She's also a graduate of the University of the West Indies, Cave Hill campus, where she earned a bachelor's degree with first-class honors in educational administration. Ms. Jordan continues her professional development through the attainment of the Level 4 Caribbean Vocational Qualifications, what we call CVQs, in assessment and training and development. Please join with me as we welcome Ms. Jordan.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning. I hope everybody is doing well this morning, and the challenges that we're all facing will reduce a little bit. We're having some technical challenges here, so I am hoping that the gremlins stay away for the 90 minutes that I am here with you. So we're looking this morning at the intentional leader, empowering future leaders who dare to succeed. And thank you, Alison, for that introduction. Sometimes when I hear my bio, I ask myself, who is it that they're talking about?
You're welcome.
So let's get started. We have a saying that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And here we are asking you to be intentional. And we tend to use that saying sometimes as a buffer for when things don't go exactly as we hope, or when we doubt ourselves and our ability to do certain things. So let me counter that thought with a quote from Douglas MacArthur, who was an American military general. And he said, a true leader has the confidence to stand alone, the courage to make tough decisions, and the compassion to listen to the needs of others. He does not set out to be a leader, but becomes one by the equality of his actions and the integrity of his intent. So when we look at the environment that all of us as leaders have to operate in, our current work environment is one that can be overwhelming with changes and turns at every corner. Changes relate to restructuring in our ministries or departments, new and updated goals, new staff, new performance standards, and of course, the unexpected challenges in our social, political, and economic environment. But this webinar is about empowering you to lead with intention, with clarity of purpose, and a heightened awareness of what you want to achieve. And if we look at our role and our path as leaders, sometimes we are thrust into the position and we're not sure just how we want to do it, if we should do it how our predecessor did, whether or not we have the time to shape it for ourselves. So, we are unsure of how we want to do it or just how you are expected to do it. So as we discuss and have the conversation this morning on the intentional leader, you will see that part of the success is about making a conscious choice to achieve the goals that have been placed before you. Yeah, so let's look at our objectives for this morning. So by the end of this webinar, you'll be able to distinguish between leadership and intentional leadership. You'll be able to incorporate actions that lead to intentional leadership. And you should be able to self-assess your ability to lead yourself, your team, or the organization in an intentional way. So I know as we go through the presentation, you may have some questions and etc. And you will be guided as to when, where, how to place your questions so that they can be addressed. And so we don't miss any of the questions that you may have. So I'm going to take you back to primary school a bit. Who has heard of the term doing word? If you have, show me your green, give me a green tick. So click at the bottom of your screen and hit the reaction button. And let me see those green ticks if you are familiar with the doing word, what we call a doing word. Oh yeah,
Hey, I'm seeing lots of
I'm
thumbs up.
seeing those thumbs up. Awesome. So for those who haven't, and it seems as though we everybody has, but a doing word is a term used to describe actionable words. And those who are familiar with the PRDS process knows that our objectives start with a doing word. Every sentence requires a verb at its most basic level to be complete. We know that doing words such as walk, play, slide, listen. Given this, how do we lead as a doing word? What does leading look like? Yeah, so that's a thought that I want you to think about. What does leading look like? So what actions are observed when a person leads? I want you to go into the chat and type your response. So go into the chat and type your response to the question. What actions are observed when a person leads? I'm seeing motivation of others to perform, a listener, leadership, communication. One of the actions observed is less confusion in the workplace, consideration of others' input, good time management skills, guiding, explaining the way how they treat others, inspire, teamwork, communication, sets examples, provides guidance, confidence. So I'm seeing a lot of guidance, a lot of motivation, a lot of guidance, teaching, being at the front and showing confidence, facilitator, giving clear instructions, purpose and vision, guidance, confidence, decision maker, motivation, emotional intelligence, doing as you would like done to you, the golden rule, being decisive, empowering others. Yes, you all have some good observable actions here, being consistent, what you expect to see in when a person leads, task accomplished. Yes. And we have the comment that the leader can follow, lead, listens, and speaks the truth, even if it gets backlash, showing empathy. Yes. So you've given some good observable actions, what you expect to see when a person leads. And I want you that everything that you have shared here that you take on board, because leadership is the ability to influence someone or something to go with or follow. Lead may also be to control a group or a situation, or to be out front and winning. These terms can be very abstract when you are required to be practical and observable in your effort. The abstract nature does not lend to you being assessed in a positive manner at the end of March during your PRDS appraisal meeting. So I want to thank you for your continued sharing of what it looks like, what actions are observed when a person leads. And I want you to take these to heart as we go forward. So in order for leading to be observable and accessible, it has to be intentional. According to a LinkedIn article by author Katie Anderson, an executive coach and advisor, intentional leadership is leading with your core purpose and clarity of purpose for self and your team. You know, they say that if you don't know where you're going, you're not going to know when you get there. So, and as an intentional leader, the leader supports the team for them to be their true selves and their best selves so they can meet their most important challenges. And so for those who have indicated that you're leading from that, an intentional or leadership observable is leading from the front, you can also lead from the side, as in guiding, and you can also lead from behind. So it is not only leading from the front. So let us see what it looks like so that you can measure your own approach to intentionality. So we're familiar with leadership, so we're walking on that path now to intentional leadership. And intentional leadership is defined as a focused, sustained approach towards a common goal. It is a good strategy to assist succeeding in our current rapidly changing public service. So our vision if you will, is there on the screen for the Barbados Public Service. Is the Barbados Public Service a model of excellence in innovation, service, and leadership? So our focus should be towards that common goal, regardless of where we sit in the public service. Every day we hear about transformation, restructuring, improving, and innovating. We're also hearing about self-direction and self-awareness. We're also hearing about the CFR, the commitments of for results, which has its own list of objectives that are critical to our public service and its thrust for success and excellence. Intentional leadership nurtures transformation and discovery in people as they learn, as they grow, as they work towards significant tangible results. Focusing on purposeful action and conscious decision making involves setting clear goals and objectives and working toward them deliberately and strategically. So I want to hear from you to set a baseline for where we are. I'm going to ask our producer to launch a poll with a single question. Do you and your team have a sustained common approach to your goals? If you do not work directly with a team, then reflect about yourself and your interaction with other staff, colleagues, and peers in the organization as your team. So I'm going to pause and give you the opportunity to respond to the poll, which is launched and should be on your screen. So you just select yes or no and hit submit. All right. So from the responses, I am seeing that 67% of you say yes, that you and your team have a sustained common approach to your goals, and 33% indicated no. And this is going to be, thank you so much for launching that poll for me. But, you know, does this mean that if you responded no, that you're saying that you're not intentional in your leadership? I'm seeing some comments in the screen that in the chat that says, while I think we all want to reach departmental goals, it is difficult for it to be sustained given the challenges faced by team members, which can range from personal to professional. So if you say no to having a sustained common approach to your goals, does it mean that you are not intentional? And I agree with the Ms. Stowe in the chat that who says that consistency is the problem. So when I started by saying that the road to hell is paved with good intention, it is not the intention that causes the challenge. It is the non-action of that intention that causes the challenge. Yeah. So by the end of this discussion, you may be surprised that you can be, and you probably are intentional in your leadership. If you responded yes, then you are saying that you are intentional. And by the end of the session, you should be able to refine and improve your purposefulness or intentionality. So I want to thank you for sharing, and going forward, we're going to work through what intentional looks like in practice and whether or not we can maintain that consistency and help guide our team members to work through the challenges that they may be facing, whether they're personal or professional. So, intentional leadership begins with you. It begins with me. It begins with each of us. So let us look at the qualities of an intentional leader. Remember, such a leader would have to be focused, should have a common approach to goal achievement with their team. So they must be able to share with their team, and they must be able to get the buy-in with their team. But don't allow me to jump ahead. Let's look and see what these qualities are that the intentional leader should possess. The first is being self-aware. And being self-aware means that you acknowledge your strengths, your weaknesses, and I don't like to use weaknesses. What I would rather use are areas for growth or areas for improvement, and acknowledge that you have blind spots, those areas of yourself that you cannot see but are observable by others. You become more self-aware when you reflect and receive feedback from others around you. For example, during your PRDS appraisal, your team member may provide comments about your supervisory ability that may or may not be true, but they are worth reflecting on to understand their perspective about who you are. Blind spots can hinder your growth, so you would want to unleash them and unlearn them to open up new pathways to an improved self. So you have to be honest about yourself, your knowledge, your skills, your behaviors, and achievement of goals. And one of the things that I have been able to share with my team as an area for growth is that I am in my head a lot. So I need to improve the communication and get the thoughts out of my head and share with them so that they can get on board with what is happening. But in the only way I would have been able to identify that is if I do some self-awareness and self-reflection and be honest about those areas where I need to develop, those areas for growth. One of the other qualities for an intentional leader is being an effective communicator. And this refers to your ability as a leader to share your vision, to share your values and goals so that you inspire your team. That is, your team would essentially know what you're about. It also means sometimes less talking and more listening and more observing. It means allowing your team members to feel valued and by extension, build that foundation for your trustworthiness. Another quality is that of being empathetic. How can you assist and build trust when you do not recognize or understand the challenges experienced by your team? Sometimes we only see our perspective, and this ruptures that foundation for building trust. When the leader is empathetic, you are able to see the issues from multiple perspectives. And this helps your team members to make informed decisions about improving processes, procedures, or adjusting team or individual objectives. So while you may come with your perspective, this is what I want and this is what I need to do, as one of our colleagues said earlier, sometimes it is derailed by the professional and personal challenges that your team may have. And you cannot say that does not matter, because it will impact their ability to perform and their ability to function. So sometimes we need to put it aside and understand where our team members are coming from in order to move forward and to be consistent and to be successful. So another quality that we need to exhibit as intentional leaders is flexibility. And this refers to your ability to adapt to changing circumstances. And I am going to be vulnerable here. This is one of the areas that I have a challenge with, because I am a planner and I plan down to the last possible. I break it down to the smallest task. And then I have a contingency, and I have a contingency on a contingency. And then something happens that throws my task plan out through the window. And sometimes you have to pause and reflect and regroup. And I will admit that being flexible is an area that I am truly working on, the ability to adapt to changing circumstances. So your team or your team leader has communicated a need to change your current objectives because circumstances may have changed, priorities may have shifted. An acceptance of the change requires a flexibility in your thought process to break through your mindset and your previous approach. It requires you to be open to their ideas and strategies. It may even mean that you can take calculated risks on behalf of your team and respond to challenges while embracing new opportunities. When you are flexible, you model a positive attitude towards unexpected changes, and you offer and discuss choices towards achieving a given goal. In this case, it is not my way or the highway, but it is how can we together work on this change that has presented itself, which leads us into the next quality that the intentional leader should have. And that quality is being team-oriented. So if you are self-aware and an effective communicator who listens more and have the ability to see issues from multiple perspectives and can adapt quickly to embrace opportunities and correct challenges, then you are on your way to being team-oriented. Here you value the perspective, the ideas, and the opinions of your team and use them to make informed decisions for the betterment of the team and the organization. There is nothing worse than a team member who believes that they're not being listened to, or they're not being engaged, or they don't feel part of the process. So we want to ensure that in being an intentional leader, that we involve our team members and we are open to their comments, concerns, their queries, their suggestions, their innovative ideas. So now we have had an idea of what the qualities are for an intentional leader. We have so far defined and discussed what is intentional leadership and what are some of the qualities. So what? Everyone knows that poor leadership leads to dire consequences. What then are some of those consequences of poor leadership? And I want you to type your responses to that question in the chat. What are some of the consequences of poor leadership? Demotivation or lack of motivation. Yes. Lack of communication, breakdown in communication, dysfunctional work teams, organizational goals will not be achieved, failure to meet goals, increase in absenteeism, disorganization, poor staff morale, stress in the workplace, no trust, goals not being achieved, less productivity, chaos, confusion, low morale, low productivity, misunderstandings, confused and stressed employees, failure to achieve goals, not achieving the high turnover, failure of programs and projects, yes, frustrated staff members, low morale, lack of team spirit, high turnover, persons working to the letter, sick leave, yes, no purpose or direction, despondency, confusion, oh yes, misery, poor health, definitely, unsatisfied internal and external customers, lackadaisical behaviors, staff alienation, disharmony, apathy, financial losses. Yes, people staying just for the paycheck, conflict, closure of the business. Oh, yes, you guys are on the ball. So, yes, everything that you have said here are consequences of poor leadership. And the five consequences, top five consequences of poor leadership is loss of employee morale and engagement, which is what you've said. And this occurs when the leader is not supportive, does not communicate effectively, or does not provide clear direction. So thank you so much for sharing. And you are on the ball. The number two consequence, decreased productivity. And when the leader doesn't provide the clear goals and expectations, team members may become unsure of what they're supposed to be working on and not have a clear understanding of how their work fits into the overall goals of the team. There's also then a lack of trust. When a leader is not open and honest about the goals and plans of the team or the organization, team members may not trust the leader that the leader has their best interests in mind. Decrease productivity and innovation. If a leader is too controlling and does not encourage new ideas or does not allow for experimentation and risk-taking, team members may become hesitant to share their creative ideas or take initiative in their work. And, in the public service, one may argue that it is difficult to be creative and innovative because we are hamstrung by legislation, and the legislation tells us what it is that we have to do, etc. But I beg to differ. We can find ways. The legislation there provides us with our boundaries, where what we can and cannot do, yes, but there is space within those boundaries where we can be creative, where we can experiment, where we can offer out of the box thinking and solutions. And the rounding out the top 5 is decreased quality of work. So you have all identified the consequences, the major consequences of not having good leadership. And this is where we are. So the question is, now what? How do we move forward? How do we identify those actionable steps to ensure that we become intentional? There's an interesting comment in the chat. In some places, you may not want to be creative because people will take your idea and never give you credit. I'm gonna stick a pin there. If you're doing it for the credit, then it's going to be a challenge. If you're doing it to see the team succeed, and to see the department succeed, and to see the organization succeed, and you see how what you do connects to everything else, and as a team member, that be your contribution, then yes. And I agree that people still need credit for their contribution. I understand that people still need to be able to say, to be told, yes, you did a good job. So as an intentional leader, and you take these guidelines on board, I want you to ensure that you recognize those members in your team who do a good job, who've contributed to a project, and you say to them, either in writing or writing up to the head of the department or writing to the permanent secretary, and say, yes, we as a team in, let's say, Learning and Development Directorate work together to pull off the project as you requested, but I want to identify or identify Miss Howell, because through her interaction and pulling these aspects of the project together when we were stuck, we were able to move forward and succeed. The intentional leader is one who can recognize the strengths in others and be able to give kudos where kudos are due. And I also want you to recognize that where you sit as an intentional leader, the person who sits above you may not be that intentional leader. So I don't want you to go and fall into, well, because I am not getting it, I'm not giving it, because then that is not leading with intention. Yeah, we're going to have to recognize that what we are required to give, sometimes we may not get, and we need to have those conversations with the persons who supervise us to make sure that we also get some measure of intention. And we ask those questions. What is the purpose of this project? What are the goals we are expected to achieve? Because it is through that you are able to be intentional with your team. So that was a little segue based on the comment that was made by Leah. So then the question is, now what? And I want you to take action, choose a direction. Anyone can be an intentional leader. Anyone. They can lead self through self-directedness, lead a team, or lead an organization or a large unit. I want you to take a moment and do some self-reflection here, because we're focusing on you as the intentional leader and developing your skills and your competency as an intentional leader. So I want you to do some self-reflection here and take a moment to reflect on which area you would want to focus on. A focus on what needs to be done, focus on developing people, or focus on developing self. So the poll has been launched, and I want you to answer the question, and I want you to feel free to make a note of which one you selected and as we go forward. All right. So you have about 3 minutes for this section. Just vote and we'll discuss the responses as they are calculated. So the poll has been open for 1 minute, which may very well be down to seconds now. All right. Ooh, almost an even split. Almost an even split. So 38% indicate they want to focus on developing people. 33% want to focus on developing self. And 29% want to focus on what needs to be done. Thank you so much for sharing that. So I want you to make a note of your response and take some notes from the upcoming slides on how you can be more intentional in your leadership. Not saying that your one area is more important than the other, because as you can see from this Venn diagram, they are all interrelated in ensuring that your intentional leadership is one that is truly developed. And as Leslie said, if you focus on what is to be done, you must also focus on the other two. So it is not one over the other, but I want you, given what you've identified, to pay special attention to that area that you've identified, not to the exclusion of others, of course. So, self-development. If you've chosen that you want to focus on self and improve on that area, then it is with recognition that you are ready to work on you to manage those areas of improvement that hinder your job performance or improve existing skills, knowledge, and behaviors to better your best. And I'm going to go back to primary school here. You remember that there's a little quote, a little song that we share with primary school students. Good, better, best. Never let it rest until your good is better and your better is best. When I first saw the better your best, that popped into my head at the same time. And as Rhonda is saying, you need to develop yourself first, which in turn can help develop others. And then the task at hand, you do a better job. So I want you to, one of the areas of being intentional in self-development is to engage in reflective practice. First, reflect about yourself and your work performance and be honest about it if you're working towards the goals. Ask yourself the questions, what is hindering your performance and what is sustaining it? Ask yourself, do you need further development? And part of your reflection would entail obtaining feedback from others, seeking feedback from your work colleagues about your behaviors, your values, your skills and knowledge capability. Reflect about what was shared and find ways of improving yourself accordingly. You want to be able to look at the quality of work. Was it good enough? Did I just cobble it together because of the timeline that I had? How could I have improved it? What additional information could I have included? So look at your quality of work after crossing the finish line. Develop a mentorship relationship, either with the previous holder of your post, with somebody who has the leadership qualities you aspire to have. Processes and procedures in the public service and in each ministry in many ways are unique and the knowledge is unique. So mentorship with persons who were previously in your position, seeking their advice, feedback and support from them, that may not be received elsewhere. You know, the new term is quiet quitting. The old term is work to rule. So you don't want to engage in or encourage or condone quiet quitting. You want to be able to focus on team goals. It is easy to give up when things are not going as you had hoped. But remember that outside of yourself, there is a public service that relies on our service and citizens that expect our efficiency. So I want you to take a step back and be mindful of team, be mindful of the team goals, and then find a way of working around the challenge. Don't just throw up your hands and say, you know what, I can't do this, I'm done with this. Yeah? So we want to be able to focus on team goals. Yes. You want to better your best. So as you reflect and come to a conclusion about your work performance, decide whether you have given of your best or how you can continue to improve. And I am seeing some excellent comments in the chat where, yes, self-development should be continuous. Paula says learning from previous officers is not always possible, as some are selfish and keep information and knowledge to themselves. And yes, that is true. But sometimes there are ways of being creative and innovative and working around that. So if you may have someone who's in a similar role in a different ministry or department that you may be able to connect with, have a nice little network of people around your area of competency. I know that the Ministry of the Public Service through the Learning and Development Directorate has been engaging in developing a network of HR professionals so that we can mentor each other and bounce ideas off and give guidance. One of the other points is that if you also develop people, you also create a highly motivated people and work environment. So yes, and Roland, thank you for this comment. And it is very relevant when we get to the developing people aspect of it. Claudette says sometimes there's no continuity planning or SOP, so knowledge is lost at times of retirement and reassignment of staff. And that is true. And it is also an excellent opportunity for you in the role that you are in, if there is no SOP, to start developing one so that the person who comes after you would not have such a challenge that you may have had. So we would have had, focusing on developing yourself, and the main aspect I do believe in focusing on managing self is that of reflective practice. Look at that feedback, what went well, where areas that you can improve. So let's link the area of self-development then to what happens in our day-to-day operations. So as we focus on self-development, a good place to start is the job description and or your PRDS work plan. And what you're seeing on the screen is the extract from the PRDS work plan at section 1. And as you review your job description, you should be able to identify the tasks or broad areas of work that must be completed as part of your daily work activity. So for example, you may be required to conduct research, record incoming correspondence, conduct stock taking. These would be your objectives. Yes, and are added to your PRDS work plan, and they should tell you exactly what you're required to do. But remember, being part of an intentional leader is being honest with yourself. So what happens when you are unable to do these tasks efficiently? What happens if your research is not accurate? The stock taking is never up to date, and recording correspondence is done behind schedule. This brings us to the performance measures. These will tell you how well you are doing in your job. So if you are not accurate, you're never up to date, or you're behind schedule and you're not meeting your objectives. What if you are meeting all of your objectives? Then maybe you can find ways of improving the efficiency for the job so that when you are on leave, others can follow on and carry out the task in an informed way. So this goes both ways. Your performance measures not only identify for you those areas for improvement, but if you are hitting all of those targets, it's an opportunity for not for you to feel comfortable, but it's an opportunity for self-reflection and say, yes, I'm hitting my targets, but what can I do better? How can I do better? So reflect on your own performance and seek ways of improving. Communicate with a trusted co-worker or another senior supervising officer for advice on how to improve your performance. Attend training or read on trends and practices for your area of work. Thus, if you're late with stock taking, perhaps developing a spreadsheet can assist with keeping track of supplies, or reinforcing the use of timely requests for supplies. So I want you to take the leadership challenge. If you do not have performance measures explicitly outlined, then create some for yourself as you learn more about your job and you become more intentional about your self-development. These activities assist with building the additional skills and knowledge that you need to focus on self and perform efficiently. And I know some of you are going to say, but they don't do perform PRDS in my department, so I don't know. You can pull down the blank performance report, pull out the work plan page, and set those goals and objectives for yourself. Be intentional with it, and then take it to your supervisor, the person who supervises you, and say, you know what, this is the area that I wish to improve on. Can we work together to make sure and ensure that I succeed in this area? Let's flip the script sometimes. All right. So for those of you who focused or who indicated that they wanted to prioritize the team's success. In other words, you are comfortable with your self-development, not that you will not focus on that at some point, but you want to prioritize your team's success. So when your team is successful, it really looks good on you. So prioritizing the success of your team by managing the team's development through learning, sharing, listening, guiding, and being involved. Think about what opportunities for learning and development and coaching you can provide or seek to help your team members improve their skill and performance. By focusing on their development, you're not only benefiting each individual, but also strengthening the whole team. And you're also developing some skills of your own as well. So you want to encourage team sharing. Start by sharing your own knowledge and experience. No matter where you sit in the organization, whether you're a team member, a team leader, a manager, senior executive, everyone has a contribution to make. Reflect on its benefit to the team and share it with a goal of team success. Sharing is best achieved when your team environment is positive and safe for team sharing, and respect for others and new ideas is encouraged. Encourage your team members to share also. Another thing, after you attend training or they attend training, encourage them to share their knowledge with the team. Encourage them to negotiate solutions and challenge them about their contribution to challenges and to successes. New ideas are not always effective, but they may prepare a path for an improved team solution. Brainstorm recommendations and propose solutions that may benefit the team and the ministry or department. Brainstorming is not only limited to new ideas or projects, but also to formal and informal development. Ask your team what would make their job easier and brainstorm the opportunities that can bring the solution to fruition. Then outline concrete steps to make it happen. Seek approval or funding for its implementation. In this way, you support team solutions that encourage effectiveness and drive towards achieving team and unit goals. You want to clarify team goals, expectations, and standards and procedures. And at the beginning of each year, the team should have new objectives and expectations for their performance. Ensure that they understand what is expected and the standards that measure their performance. Tell them clearly, openly, and you may share it in written format through the PRDS performance report. And you do that work plan and you have that ongoing discussion. Outline any steps that are critical to their performance and ensure that it is received in a timely manner. State clearly what performance should look like when it is done. If your team, for example, is responsible for trimming trees and clearing debris, ensure they understand that completion includes clearing the branches and broken pieces of bark from the area. The standard of performance should be that the debris is cleared on the same day that the tree is cut. You want to meet periodically, and to continue this development, you want to meet periodically outside the PRDS meeting cycle. Monthly meetings may be sufficient to discuss the progress and to continue brainstorming, to check progress, listen to worries, embrace new ideas. At these meetings, you would want to check assumptions and address challenges that may be diminishing a positive team environment. Finally, celebrate small successes and all the wins of the team so far. If you work in the registry, celebrate your achievement of a desk audit in the ministry. If you're in accounts, celebrate a payroll that everyone was paid on time and accurately. If you're in administration, celebrate a report or cabinet paper that was accepted with no errors. Break the habit of telling and listen or ask questions. In the event that there are numerous challenges and issues, get out of the habit of blaming and telling. Instead, listen and ask questions and use the responses to inform decisions about the way forward. Your way forward should be to establish, reinforce, or improve policies, procedures, or processes to prevent a repeat of the same error. So ask questions and listen openly with your heart, ears, and an open mind, and stay focused on the team goals. So again, many hands make light work, and we go back to our PRDS report. And the reason why we're linking it to PRDS is that you have the tools already to support your development as an intentional leader. So as you focus on team success, you have to shift your focus from yourself and reflect about the team goals and how best they can be achieved as a team. Whether you work in the supply section, accounts, maintenance, or you work in the field, your completed work activities take your team closer to achieving its goals. Your challenges may slow down the team's pace and even hinder achievement. And your successes add to team success. So as the intentional leader, you want to ensure that you meet regularly and participate in discussions with your team to bring about careful thought and forward motion toward team goals. Informal meetings allow quick and immediate discussion about issues, challenges, or even to pat each other on the back about successes. Make time to interact with your team with these brief informal meetings. Formal scheduled meetings are often lengthier and take time for coordination. So let us take a brief look on how the supervisor-supervisee PRDS meeting lends to promoting team success. The first progress meeting, second progress meeting, and the final appraisal meeting are formal meetings as they require you to actually document progress, challenges, and solutions as a more permanent record of individual performance. These are required, mandated meetings in our public service and in a strategic, intentional way. Supervisors should review the work of each supervisee and make an informed decision about the progress of the team. Thus, when all team members achieve their individual goals, then the team has also achieved its goals. So we always should make time to meet with the team to talk. How have they been managing? Do they have all the resources they need? Do they need assistance or guidance for professional development? Here is where you take the time to find out. Remember, being part remember, part of being an intentional leader is being able to listen more and to listen with intent. Not listen to respond, but listen to understand. Let others talk and share. Listen to their challenges. Focus on those challenges that impact their performance and work objectives, and those that hinder their performance. Document these challenges so that your team member is represented in a formal and visible way. As your team member shares challenges, invite solutions from them. They may have a viable idea for unit improvement or for self-improvement. You may offer solutions to the corresponding problems when they are unable to identify one. You may wish to guide them in achieving or determining that solution. If you do not know how to assist, take time to discuss it with someone who may be in a better position to assist. Your improved knowledge would also assist the team. So as an intentional leader, you want to share your own challenges, solutions, and successes. Be a role model for your team members. So your leadership challenge for focus on team success is to turn the attention from yourself and to focus on your team and team goals. Yeah. So from our final Venn diagram, and you see, if before we move on for the progress meeting, just tying everything back together, you want to conduct your informal and formal feedback meetings. The critical factors affecting performance allows you to understand the issues from the supervisee's point of view, and the proposed solutions is where you invite the solutions from the supervisee's point of view and seek to implement them. So you have the tools that will assist you in being intentional. So if you had identified managing your goals as the area of focus, you want that you focus on developing that area, and each public officer, team, or department has been issued with goals and objectives that must be achieved within a given time frame, budget, and with a certain set of resources. So given this, each of us is responsible for managing our assigned goals and bringing them to the desired state of completion. And this is true regardless of your position in the ministry, whether an administrative assistant, a plumber, a driver, a deputy permanent secretary, or an accountant. Thus, each of us must be intentional about our achievement of goals. And to be intentional, you should adopt the following. You should be clear about your goals. Do what needs to be done to achieve the goals that have been assigned to you. If your job is a land surveyor, for example, be honest and have work with integrity as you measure, report, and submit plans. To do this, you need to be clear about what is expected and clear about your standard of performance. Discuss your goals with your supervisor and ensure that there is clarity and common understanding. You want to be clear about the desired standards of performance. Ensure that you know what the task should look like when it is done. And if you don't ask for guidance. Working through your goals require that you check and recheck that they're accurately done in keeping with departmental standards. How do you know that the tasks are done appropriately? As the surveyor, you may submit the plan every 6 months. But what if you're required to submit within 2 weeks and respond to the client within 6 weeks? These are the standards of performance. You want to be guided by the established vision and public service values. Intentional leaders are clear about their vision. That is what they want to be in the future. They establish their vision and accept it as their North Star for guiding their actions, conversations, and decisions. And ultimately, their focus consistent action until they reach the goal. As you work towards your goal and doing what needs to be done, ensure that your actions consistently align with the vision and standards of your department and the public service. The vision of the public service is to be a model of excellence in innovation, service, and leadership. So with a thumbs up or a show of green ticks, how many of you know the vision for your ministry or department? How many of you know that? Just a quick check. Ooh. Those thumbs up not flowing as quickly as they would have. They're not flooding. Yes, I'm seeing. So there is some knowledge. Yeah. So intentional leaders, thank you so much for indicating. Intentional leaders are clear about where they need to be as it must align with their goals, values, behaviors, and what they want to accomplish. So for those who are not comfortable in stating or that they know their department's vision and mission, one of your homework activities as we leave here in being intentional is for you to seek that out and to ensure that as you work towards your goals, that you become more conscious about how your daily actions impact the achievement of that vision and the achievement of your goals. For example, what is the purpose of the meeting with your team? And what is it you hope to gain from the meeting? Or why do you continue to work in a given procedure when there may be a more updated way of doing it? Know why you are making a decision. Reflect about it. Discuss it with your team, a colleague, a mentor, or a supervisor. Then be firm in your decision and action it. If you do so, and as you do so, set a time frame for completion and write it down or add it to a calendar. This may help with managing your time towards completing the goal and meeting your deadlines for completion. So as you focus on your goals, let's start at the beginning with your job description and those additional skills that you should have. And as you identify them, put steps in place for achieving them. If you have a goal of creating spreadsheets, you may begin by working along with someone who could assist or training to learn what you need to know. And if you recall, those who do PRDS, and I keep saying to you that you already have the tools that you need to guide your intentional leadership. For each challenge that you encounter, propose a solution and work on it. Your solution may need tweaking as you learn. But finally, at the end of the PRDS form, you have an opportunity to document your goals. Your goals may not be formal or major academic achievements. Your goals may be as simple as learning a new skill, gaining knowledge about public service legislation, or learning about new roles in your ministry or department. Let your goals be self-directed so you can carve out the time and opportunity to pursue them. Then seek and identify opportunities to use the new skills and knowledge on the job so that they can be shared with your peers, team members, and new public officers. So your leadership challenge is to be self-directed as you document your goals and state precisely how you want to use them once you have achieved them. And I know that was a lot to take in. And I know that my colleagues at Learning and Development Directorate will provide the opportunity for you to review this presentation as you go through some measure of self-reflection and want to be able to identify those things that you can put into practice to improve your leadership and improve it to a focus of intentional leadership. But, you know, we talked a lot about what intentional leadership looks like. But what I want to share with you is sometimes what being unintentional looks like. Sometimes we waste so much time worrying and blaming and complaining and venting. This is how you are unintentional about your leadership of self, team, and situations. And this presentation here on this slide shows you some ways of some of the things not to do so that you don't unintentionally sabotage your way forward. We don't want to whisper. We don't want to grumble. We don't want to, at the end of a meeting, walk away not saying what we should have said. You want to communicate openly about values, about challenges, about standards, about solutions, and you want to be able to communicate openly and respectfully. So don't whisper. Don't blame. You want to acknowledge errors by discussing them with the individual, but ultimately put measures in place to avoid repeating them. In doing so, you share valid information and update expectation and processes. Do not micromanage. Instead, trust yourself and your team. So if you have given them the relevant information and the relevant guidance, don't be the helicopter leader hovering over the shoulder to make sure that they're doing it the way you said to do it or the way in which you would do it. Trust yourself, trust your team, and do not quit. Don't throw your hands up in despair and say, you know what, I'm done with that. I can't get it done or whatever, or allow your team members to do that. Instead, set the goals that you want to achieve, set the standards, and be self-directed. So try wherever possible not to do these things. Don't whisper, don't blame, don't micromanage, don't quit. Be intentional in your actions. So as you work on being intentional, first, trust yourself. Second, trust the process. Self-assess about your professional development when you complete a task and as you interact with others. Be honest with yourself. Did you do that task to the best of your ability? Did you communicate with your staff member or in your team member in a way which engenders trust? Did you communicate with them in a way that will encourage them to come to you with any challenges that they may be facing? Change may be slow. It will never be according to our timeline, but make it intentional by focusing on established values, expectations, and performance standards. Be familiar with the goals and check and recheck that you're on the right path towards achieving them. Write them down or keep them close so that you can refer to them once a month, quarterly, or as necessary. Seek opportunity to improve your skill set. You may be self-directed, but you can also benefit from mentorship and in-service training. Seek opportunities and make time for them. Work with your team. Be democratic in the decision making and allow everyone to contribute to the idea. Avoid blame. The action is already done. Focus on how you could work or improve to avoid repeating mistakes. Work actively towards improving self, team, and the public service. You can be part of the problem, but choose to be part of the solution towards change, transformation of the public service. So, in being intentional leaders, self-assess, set your goals, improve your professional skill set, brainstorm with your team, and communicate timely solutions. Choose to be part of the solution. So we've presented here a lot of information. And I know there's some of us in the room who like to go away and reflect and think about what was presented and work out a plan as to how they can incorporate in their day-to-day activities. But I want you now to just pause for a minute and reflect about all that was shared and discussed in the session. If you're willing to roll the dice and let the chips fall where they may, or whether you will take that conscious and intentional choice towards success. If your choice is to be intentional, what is the first thing you will do once you walk away from this webinar? What is your first step to being an intentional leader? And you are free to share that with the chat in the chat, or if you wish to send it privately to the moderators, that is fine, but that is the thought that I want you to go away with. What is your first step towards being an intentional leader? And I'm seeing a lot of self-assessment and self-awareness and reevaluate myself. First step. Thank you. Vision is important. Self-assessment. Assess myself and make the necessary goals. Self-confidence and communication. Self-assessment. Listen more. Honest reflection to self. Reflective. I've been self-assessing since I started here. Yes, self-assessment, teamwork, team management, team self and team assessment. Trust my team. Awesome. I am loving the responses that I am seeing. Self-assessment 1, to bring the department's vision to the team and move together. And as I said, and as I kept saying throughout, you have the tool available to guide you in setting the intention of yourself and your team as you move forward. All right. So I want to thank you so very much for sharing your thoughts and sharing how you are going to move forward. And I will hand you back over to our moderator to conclude our session. But I do want to thank you so much for your active participation. Over to you, Allison.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jordan.
You're welcome.
At this time, colleagues, this is your time to ask questions. You can take them in the chat. I know you have asked many questions already, but any outstanding questions, please place in the chat at this time. We're going to give you 2 minutes to do that. Ms. Jordan, you're being thanked.
Yes, I'm reading. Thank you. They have no, I'm not seeing
No
any questions,
questions. No
Allison.
questions for you, Ms. Jordan. Very thorough presentation. Thank you so much. Okay, then.
All right. And I want to, as the presenter, I want to thank the Learning and Development Directorate and the officers there for developing this webinar to assist us in assist us as public officers in putting another tool in our toolkit in being effective leaders. Oh, I'm seeing some questions. In bettering yourself, is there any way to ask about what qualifications you should seek? The question you have to ask yourself first is where it is you want to end up. If you are uncertain on where you want to end up, then you're not going to be able to build the foundation and put those planks in place to ensure that you get where you want to go. So the first step is to identify where you want to end up, and then that will tell you what you need to do in order to build those planks. Any tips on how to influence your supervisors on being intentional? I think the tip that I would give most on influencing your supervisors on being intentional is for you to model being the intentional leader. So you do that with your team. If you do not supervise a team, then you focus on your managing of self. And if that involves setting goals, etc., you go to your supervisor and you indicate to your supervisor, this is an area of self-development for me, and I would welcome your contribution to ensure or to help me get to be the best that I could possibly be in this role. And this is where you can help me. So while you are the supervisee and you're guiding, but you're asking your supervisor, this is the help I need for you to get me where I need to get. And with that guidance, with you being intentional, it should bring your supervisor along with some measure of intention as well. Because while you are focusing on self, your supervisor should be focusing on you as a member of the team. And will they be able to receive a copy of the recording? I do believe that Learning and Development Directorate will make it available, and you will get that information in due course. In the present environment, do you think that micromanagement may have a role to play? Micromanagement has its place for particular circumstances. So for example, if something has come up and it is exceedingly critical and it's a very short turnaround time, you may pull your team together and you may say, okay, team, this is what we've been asked to do. This is the time frame in which we have to do it in. So team member A, I want you to do A, B, C, D, E. Team member B, this is what you're going to be required to do. And you can say to them, I will check in with you at the end of the day or at the start of every day to see how you're getting through. But we need to have it done by such and such a time. So sometimes it is a requirement, but when that extenuating circumstance is over, bring the team together, indicate to them, yes, this was an unusual circumstance, but how did we do? Did we do it well? What could we have improved on? And so if this matter presents itself in the future, we have the tool, we have the skills that we can go forward without question. So yes, micromanagement does have a role to play in certain situations, but it is how you deal with that afterwards to make the leadership more intentional, and then you release that hold on it. So the hold was just to get the task done in the short time frame, but then you use it as a learning opportunity and a developmental opportunity going forward. How does one do this with contractors? Well, contractors are members of your team. So the same processes may apply, but in that case, you focus on self first and ensure that you're communicating accurately, that you're giving good guidelines, good standards, that you're setting the goals, you're setting the guidelines. So that may be the first step in dealing with contractors and applying the intentional leadership. But remember, intentional leadership begins with you and how you shift your engagement with members of your team to get the output that is required. What can the public service do to implement mentorship programs to assist further leaders? I am sure that that is something that we at the Ministry of the Public Service can discuss. So at this point, I am unable to say what we can do, but I am certain it is something that will be discussed for the future. But I do know that we do have some programs for future leaders that Learning and Development Directorate will develop to ensure that we maintain the level of leadership that we have required. Sometimes you are changed from one stream to another. So what you may have envisioned 3 years prior would have to be amended and guidance would be required. Where do you get that guidance? If you are within a structure that has an HR or personnel unit, that is your first step, right? But again, the first step is identifying what it is that you need or where you want to be, and then speaking with your HR unit to get the guidance that you require. And in the event that that does not work, then you may reach out to the Ministry of the Public Service. Is it prudent to single out good work? If you are singling out good work in an effort to commend an officer on a job well done, then there is nothing wrong with, in my opinion, with singling out a team member who has worked well and who has contributed significantly to a project. I will do it, or I would do it in a way in which, one, the other team members do not feel marginalized, and it requires a certain level of finesse in communication. But you can, the flip side of not singling out or communicating or congratulating good work, the flip side is the officer who may say that I work really hard and I don't even get a thank you. So you're going to have to balance it given the understanding of your team and how you communicate such information like that to your team. How do you motivate your team if circumstances outside your control is causing them to be demotivated? Acknowledge to them that the circumstance is outside of your control. Acknowledge it, admit it. Yes. And if it is within your purview to draw it to your supervisor, then you can do that and indicate this is an area that is causing concern. And given our time frame, I have the opportunity for one more question. Planning, succession, continuity planning can contribute to the effective, efficient running of a section. However, can junior officers get together to make this happen, or would it require directive from the supervisor manager? Remember, we spoke earlier about encouraging innovation and creativity and problem solving among your team. Remember, we spoke about brainstorming within your team. Make this a team activity guided by you as the leader. If succession planning in your particular unit is a challenge, then you come up with a proposed solution that can then be taken to the persons who make those decisions. But it should be guided by you as the intentional leader, and the intent should be clear, where the focus of that discussion or that brainstorming activity is to focus on organization first, to make sure that the organization is well equipped to carry out its mandate. Okay, so thank you for your questions. Back over to you, Allison.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan. Trying to get my slide back there. 1 minute, colleagues. Thank you so much, Ms. Jordan. At this time, thank you for your questions, colleagues. But we're out of time. Those questions that were not answered at this time will be forwarded to the presenter, and the answers will be sent to you within a week of this webinar. Ms. Jordan, thank you for this very informative presentation and timely reminder of what is the leadership and what is intentional leadership, and what are some of the qualities that we can take away of being an intentional leader. We thank you, Ms. Jordan. As we wrap up, please take one moment to offer your feedback about the webinar. You're going to click in the link that has been placed in the chat, and we want you to submit without delay. It has been placed in the chat. We value your feedback as it assists with improving the learning and development Directorate webinar productions for our participants. Please note your feedback is completely anonymous. I'll give you 2 minutes to fill out that feedback form. Thank you. Okay, colleagues, we see your responses coming in. We want to wrap up. We have reached the end of our webinar. Join with me as I thank Ms. Jordan again for a very informative session. Thank you again, Ms. Jordan. On behalf of the Director General, Human Resources, and the Director of the Learning and Development Directorate, thank you for joining, listening, and participating, as well as your comments and your feedback. Thank you, colleagues. Do enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you. You as well.